On February 26th of this year, an unarmed 17-year-old African-American kid was walking home from a convenience store in a Florida gated community when he was shot and killed by a so-called neighborhood watch figure who claimed he was acting in self-defense. The death has been followed by weeks of rallies, outrage, and demands for justice, growing in number and in volume, and now finally investigations. In our third story, the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department will join with the FBI to monitor the probe. The local Florida county grand jury will investigate, and yet the shooter has not been arrested nor charged. While walking home from that convenience store to the home of his father's girlfriend in a Sanford, Florida gated community, Trayvon Martin was spotted by volunteer neighborhood watch figure George Zimmerman. Zimmerman found Martin to be suspicious, and he called the police.
This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining, and he's just walking around looking about.
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black. They always get away.
Despite the dispatcher then advising him not to, Zimmerman pursued Martin.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Moments later, Martin was shot in the chest. He died at the scene. Because of his claim of self-defense, George Zimmerman is yet to be arrested or charged with any crime. A 16-year-old friend of Martin's who was on the phone with him at the time of the incident provided further evidence that it was Martin who was being pursued.
I'm understand what you're doing around here. Somebody push Trayvon because the head said this down.
Martin's family attorney, Benjamin Crump, today explained that the investigation is just the beginning.
Even though the Justice Department and the FBI have opened up an investigation, we will not stop, we will not rest until he is arrested.
Joined now by a senior reporter for the Huffington Post, Trymaine Lee. Thank you for your time tonight, sir.
Thank you, Keith. It's good to be here.
How is this man Zimmerman not under arrest, or at least having been charged at this point?
I really think it depends on who you speak with. If you speak to Sanford Police Chief Bill Lee, he says there's no evidence to refute Zimmerman's claims of self-defense. But if you talk to the Martin family's lawyer and you talk to folks in Sanford, they say there's a long history here of distrust and the police being less than excited to arrest individuals and hold folks accountable when they need to be.
The Sanford police, we know the DOJ FBI investigation and the grand jury would look at Zimmerman, obviously. Are they also looking at the police department and why that one sat on this case and has sat on this case for more than 3 weeks?
In talking to folks who have a pretty good understanding of how this thing will work and turn out, basically the DOJ and the FBI come and will put a lot of pressure. Hopefully they'll put a lot of pressure, and this is exactly what the family had wanted. They have no faith in the Sanford Police Department, so they're hoping that by having this third-party investigation, they put a little pressure. Clearly they'll be looking into bringing their muscle to the investigation, and you know, so much is yet to be seen.
You mentioned history and distrust. This Mr. Zimmerman has a history too, doesn't he? Isn't he a constant, almost paranoid presence in that community about outsiders and people he perceives as threats who turn out to be, you know, people just walking home?
Oh, most certainly. Since January 2011, he's called 911 about 46 times. Mm-hmm. He has a history of following individuals in their vehicles, and he basically has, as the lawyers say, he had a cop complex. He wanted to be in law enforcement so bad that he kind of had a habit of taking things into his own hands.
Florida has this stand your ground law, which does not require a threatened citizen to retreat in order to claim self-defense if he acts supposedly in his own defense. In the aftermath of the Martin case, is it not obvious that that opens the door to exactly what happened here, including the fact that there hasn't been an arrest 3 weeks after the case?
Oh, most certainly. There have been a number of state legislatures who want to take some time to review this law to see if it's just. And some have even called it, instead of the stand your ground law, the make my day law, the dirty Harry law. And there's so much wiggle room here that in a situation like this, where all you need to do is say that you felt in fear or imminent danger, and that's all you need to be able to meet, you know, whatever person you're dealing with deadly force. And that's exactly what has some folks concerned, because they're afraid that you might end up with a situation like this when you have a young man, unarmed, shot dead.
This stuff has been going on for so long that it's kind of hard to believe that even some white people don't recognize this. 20 years ago, a little more, I moved from an apartment in Los Angeles just across the street into Beverly Hills, and the greater Southern California, tremendously diverse in terms of the community there. That doesn't mean anything. I would go and shop, do my food shopping after work about midnight. I'd walk to this store that was a block and a half away and then walk home. And the first few nights, first time I was living in Beverly Hills, I would cross the LA line into Beverly Hills. A police cruiser that would come out of nowhere, put this blinding searchlight on me for a couple of seconds, and then shut the thing off. And I didn't understand why. It went on 3 or 4 nights till this 5th or 6th night. There's a guy behind me, 20, 30 feet behind me, and they shined the light on me and turned it off, and then they shined the light on him. They didn't turn it off. And he was black. And they stopped him, and they questioned him, and I had chills that went from here down to my toes. What is it going to take to save the next Trayvon Martin? Is every white person in this country going to have to be mistaken for being non-white by some authority or some idiot who thinks he is the authority before we realize how rampant this kind of racism still is?
I think, unfortunately, it might actually take a Trayvon Martin to save the next Trayvon Martin. I'm talking to folks, black, white. At this point, it's not even a race issue. Some have said it's a morals and ethics issue. So often, we have to deal with these layers and layers of stereotypes. And as young black men, you want to raise these boys up to be strong and proud, but also be wary. And unfortunately, in doing so, I think sometimes we can steal their innocence. So honestly, I'm not sure what it will take. But I think if there's any good out of this at all in talking to folks, is that this Trayvon Martin issue and the community galvanizing around it is bringing attention to it. And I think no matter black, white, whatever your class is, it's hard not to be touched by this case.
Yeah, and very important, if you're not black or if you're not a member of a minority group, to just picture yourself in the situation that I described. Because at that point, you suddenly realize, even if it's just for a second, what it's like to be suspected, not for what you've done, not for who you actually are in life, but just for what somebody mistakes you for thinking he thinks you look like at a distance. It's an extraordinary, and in my case, it was a cheap lesson. For everybody else, because of this poor man, this poor young man in Florida, it's a very expensive lesson. In any event, Trymaine Lee of the Huffington Post, great thanks for your insight tonight.
Thank you for having me, Keith.
Certainly. All right.